health. We will investigate the origins of COVID. We'll investigate the AG's research into calling parents terrorists. We'll investigate Afghanistan. Afghanistan withdrawal. Why did we have 13 new Gold Star families? Because this president closed Bagram that allowed a suicide bomber out that killed the individual. The release of American taxpayers' reports. Why is that being allowed? There is a lot of places that we can hold them accountable.
That was House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy joining me on Sunday Morning Futures yesterday, outlining what Republicans will investigate should they take back the House in November. Joining me right now is the Coalition to Protect American Workers Executive Director and former Chief of Staff to Vice President Mike Pence, Mark Short. Mark, great to see you. Thanks very much for being here. Do you think Republicans will keep these promises and launch these investigations?
Good morning, Maria. I certainly think so. I think the reality is that what we've seen with each Congress is sort of a more partisan take on a lot of these investigations. But Kevin's exactly right as to where we should be investigating. These are things that American people need answers to. And, you know, when you go talk about the COVID virus, I think there was always concern that not just where it came from and to what extent it came out of the Wuhan lab, but also China's refusal to share information initially. When the Trump administration was first learning of it and asked to send CDC scientists and others into China to help with the investigation, they were blocked. And I think there's a lot that China has hidden from the American people and from the globe about the origins of the virus and about their refusal to share information. But, you know, also as it relates to Bagram and the withdrawal and surrender in Afghanistan, you know, I recall the intelligence community pleading with the administration to say, even if you're going to withdraw, please allow us to hold on to Bagram Air Base, because there's so many counterterrorism missions that we conduct out of this base. And the Biden administration clearly didn't listen to what the intelligence community asked. And I think it's put American national security at a huge detriment.
Well, that's what we're seeing. And earlier, Secretary Pompeo talked about now 4 crises erupting at the same time. You've got, you know, the Russians wanting to invade Ukraine. You've got the CCP wanting to invade Taiwan. You've got North Korea launching missiles. You've got Iran and the Biden administration giving in to Iran with the sanctions relief. What are your thoughts in terms of where this is going?
Well, Maria, I think that unfortunately weakness does arouse evil. And what we've seen from this administration and their surrender in Afghanistan is that now other leaders are going to want to test the mettle of America's leadership. And I don't think that Putin, for instance, is really that concerned about what Joe Biden's going to do or what his resolve is if he were to go into Ukraine.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see us tested on many fronts. And I think it is a direct result of the way that the administration surrendered and eventually withdrew from Afghanistan.
Yeah, and even though the polls are dropping, the Democrats are keep pushing forward on their climate agenda. The government is about to run out of money again. On February 18th, lawmakers are signaling another short-term bill. We'll probably get the continuing resolution, kicking this down the road again. Mark, what are your expectations for policy? There's also this push to get whatever they can through on Build Back Better. Maybe it's the $500 billion in climate money. What happens in the way of business in Washington in the coming weeks?
Well, Maria, the bad news on the continuing resolution is it shows again the dysfunction in Congress and the ability to come together with long-term planning, which I think most hurts the military in not knowing what its funding levels will be. But the good news for American taxpayers is with this Congress, this Democrat Congress in the House and the Senate and the White House, if they were to have a real appropriations process, it would only be much bigger spending, which would only exacerbate the inflationary pressures that we have. So the silver lining in their inability to actually pass a bill is a continuing resolution is better for taxpayers because it'll be less spending right now. So that's the one upside and the positive. On the BBB, what we saw last week was Nancy Pelosi again saying, we want to bring this back up. You even saw Chairman Wyden, the Senate Finance Chairman, saying, I'm looking for ways to bring this back up. So I think you're going to see in the President's State of the Union speech on March 1st an attempt to pivot and say, here's what I want to do now in this Congress and moving forward pieces of this bill. So I think everybody has to be attentive to that and say, we don't need more spending. I think on Thursday when the new CPI numbers come out, you'll see the highest inflation we've had in 40 years. So the last thing we want is for them to say, okay, well, here's how we're going to break it up and push pieces of this bill and more spending on the American people.
Yeah, well, the CPI expected to be up 7.3% year over year. Mark, it's great to see you. Also in the President's State of the Union on March 1st, he's likely to talk about the Ukraine border. We'll see if he mentions his own border, the southern border, where 2 million people were arrested breaching that just in the last year. Mark Short, thanks for weighing in. We'll be right back.